Good afternoon. It's Willie and Connie.
It is.
Or Connie and Willie.
It's really Connie and Willie, you know that. You're the headliner, I'm just a backstage guy.
No.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to be, right?
Somebody. You didn't argue with that, huh? But,
Oh, we're glad we can just be ourselves with everybody, right?
that's right. Yeah.
We're just real people.
Yeah, that's one thing about it. You know, people know that we're just a silly couple that just loves Jesus, right?
Right. And know that we're loved by Jesus.
And we love people.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Speaking of, so we took a little ride. This is one of our favorite things to do. We have a golf cart, just a cheap old falling apart golf cart. And where we live, we actually still have alleyways, right?
Right.
You know, a lot of the neighborhoods these days are all concrete and nothing, sidewalks and no alleyways. But we do live in a town that has alleyways. So when we take our dogs for a walk, we ride, they walk. We like to go through the alleys. And
Disclaimer: we don't drag our dogs.
No.
That we go slow.
Very slow.
And because our dogs are old, one of them's really old. So, but they like to walk and stuff, and we go through the alleys. So
yes, and so we'll drive through the alleys, and let me tell you, the alleyways, the back of people's houses, there, when you go through, you can tell how people, probably the real people live, right?
right.
Because I mean, there's some that there's just, you know, we have some backyards that are just full of junk, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got some that are the fences are falling down. There's a lot of garbage just dumped in the alleyway sometimes, right?
Porches falling down, and then you got some that are just perfectly immaculate
Or well kept, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But see, the thing is with the ones that are not well kept, if you go to the front of the house, you almost get a completely different picture.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I always say you can kind of tell how people live by the back alley.
Mm-hmm.
What's in the back alley.
Right.
And so I was I was reading a book the other day and the back alley word came up, and it's like, it just really made me started to think something's coming from this. So, you know, I'm going to be honest. I can make some judgments from the back alleys.
Yeah. I think we all can, don't you?
Oh, Holy Spirit keeps me in check. I have to keep myself in check some days. You know, He helps me. But there's some real, you know, how do you want to say? Just, we can do it. Just let's face it, we're human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, oh my gosh, how do they live like that? I always say you kind of can tell about a person somewhat from the back alley, but really, maybe that's not completely true.
Right.
I mean, you can tell certain things, but not everything, right?
Yeah, we can make a lot of assumptions.
Right. That's the whole thing. Assumptions come in. Mm-hmm. So then it got me to thinking, we all have a back alley.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Mm.
We all have a back alley of existence. You know, in the organized church, just saying, like, as we gather, the organized church, right? It's almost like you're taught you've got to avoid the people, to stand at a distance from people that have the back alleys of existence.
Right. That's a good point.
Isn't that? I mean, it's almost implied, not directly always, but there is some implication there. Don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely think it. You know, I mean, it goes with people that are homeless. Maybe they're assumed to be prostitutes, or maybe they are. You don't really know what's really going on in a person's life, why they're there, and so it's easy for us to stand back out of those ways. Their back alley to you might be a different culture, a different faith, all different, but you learn that I'm not going to stick around. I want to stay away from those folks because of their, like you said, I like that term, back alleys.
Well, you know, even I was kept in check really quickly. But we have a neighbor next door, and they've lived next to us, a couple, and we hardly really ever saw them. And then all of a sudden, this young man appears.
Oh yeah.
And he's got tattoos all over his face, you know. And at that time, we were having some thefts in the neighborhood. And I came out of my mouth. I said, he looks, I don't know, maybe he's a little bit shady character. You just don't know, right? I kind of made an assumption,
Right.
a judgment about it without really even knowing, right?
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute, okay, you work with guys in the prison all the time that have tattoos, right? And a lot of those guys have just made some mistakes and are not, we really love those guys, right?
Right.
And so what happened? What ended up happening?
I introduced myself to him, and I actually like the guy. I like him a lot, and we talk a lot, almost all the time. And I don't know if
And so where did he come from?
he came from prison too. Yeah, he spent some time in prison.
He just got out recently.
Yeah. And
But how cool is that us, who that's what we're all about, right?
right.
He gets out and gets right next to a chaplain and, people that are used to people that have been in prison, right?
Right. And, disclaimer, he's not the one that was doing the theft.
No. But it was somebody just
right down
really
the street.
close.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, we do these things.
It's easy to do that, and we just automatically have an assumption, and
we make, judgments of people that have been really soiled in life.
right.
As if it's not all of us. What's in our back alley? What's in your back alley?
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. God's in our back alley.
That's it.
God is not moved by the back alley.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the back alley, and he's telling us we don't got to worry about making the front yard look a certain way.
Right.
Before him.
Right.
He knows the back alley.
I was sitting there thinking about this whole thing because it just came in my head about this because I have over the years made a judgment about somebody because of maybe they don't have money or whatever it is, and automatically I think in my head, those are not the people I want to hang out with. I'm just going to be honest with you. Or we see them driving a ratty car, or maybe it's...
Well, let's get some real issues here going on. So
yeah.
Let's just talk real here with our life. Okay, we're sitting on the front porch, right?
Oh, I know where you're going here.
And, every neighborhood's got things, right? And so we have a building like 3 houses down across the street from us. It's an apartment building, and it looked really ratty when we moved in, right? And we know there were drug deals going on over there and stuff like that. You probably tell the story better than I could. But they did fix up the place.
Yes.
And it looks a lot better. It looks like it's may have cleaned up some of the people they had staying there. I don't know. Evicted some people. But so you were sitting on the front porch this past weekend, and you were telling a little story.
Well, there was quite a bit of stuff going on in that building. I was like, oh, and a car pulled up. It was actually a company. I'm not going to throw out the company's name, but a service truck come up. Guy came over, dropped off some, made a quick transaction and left. And then pretty soon a female came out, got in one car, came back, got in another car, came back, and got in another car, came back. And the truth is in all of that, and you just think, those are probably not the people that we ought to reach out to, because we see their back alley life. And you brought that up about the whole deal about
what you were thinking that at first.
Oh yeah.
If we're to be real, I mean, first instinct is like
stay away from them.
Yeah. And we were kind of getting going on, kind of laughing, and honestly, and then I said, well, in all seriousness, we have no clue what this girl's gone through. And I said, I have had a daughter that's been into drugs and stuff.
Right.
And I said, I'm pretty sure she probably did some pretty nefarious things and may have done some of the same things we're thinking this lady was doing.
Right.
But, we don't know anything about the lady. We don't know where she's been, what she's suffered that's caused her to be this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what we do, don't we? I don't care how much, we're all human. I mean,
Right.
it's not, why can't we just admit that?
Right. And you know what?
Not that we should do it, but we do.
Right. And you know what's really cool about that? Even when we assume, even when we kind of step back or whatever it is, God's right there in the middle of it. And as you were talking about it, I was reminded so much about Kendra's memorial service, celebration of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls that came up, if it wasn't for this girl, I wouldn't know Jesus right now. And so...
Yeah. So we don't even know what that, every
Mm-hmm.
person, each life has significance. I don't care what we've done, what we're doing. We
Mm-hmm.
have significance, especially to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that, even when you make your misjudgments, and even when you do, us, God's in the middle of it, didn't shake how he felt about us, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from the back alleyways of our life.
Yeah, I was thinking about a couple of young men that were standing across the street, and we'll be honest, everybody in the neighborhood were concerned because they were consistently standing on the corner
Yeah.
every day. And I went up and talked to them a couple times, and the last time I was just real honest with them. I said, this is not a good look for you guys. I said, you guys may be totally innocent, but it looks like you're not. And it changed their habits. And I think
what did you find out they were end up doing? They
were using the internet at the church next door. That's all there was. And so, but the point is, we can assume when we look in the back alleys of people's life that things are really nefarious, or they're not somebody we want to hang around, or probably God. Let's just be honest. I was taught that God probably doesn't love them, or he rejects them. That's the word I remember. God hates a.
Well, it's said God hates the sin but loves the sinner, but
Mm-hmm.
how many messages makes it seem like God hates the sinner too?
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Come on. There was just so much. It's just portrayal of how God wasn't,
Right.
how he isn't,
Mm-hmm. And that kind of, when you started talking to me about this, Connie, it kind of had me kind of called in check about me and my assumptions on things. We think a certain way about cultures, faith,
anything.
lifestyles.
Somebody believes differently than you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I have to believe, if I really want to be honest, that God loves every single person, and in spite of what our thinking or our stereotypical thoughts are about that person, I don't believe that that's how God sees them. And he's in that back alley. I love that term. It's going to keep me from
Yeah, because I was really like, wow. And then what the next day, you can easily go into that thought pattern. It's like, but this, he pops out certain words to me, and it used to happen all the time. It's a little fewer and far between, but man, when something he does, boy, it's like that there's something there that I need to pay attention to, like back alley.
I was thinking on the flip side of that, whenever I was growing up, and I still see it in my life, whenever I see somebody and they put on the airs of having a perfect life. And it was sitting there thinking about that, well, they must be really loved by God, or they're really filled with
devoted to,
and God's really got a hold of their life and changed it. And you almost become envious of that person and you think, why am I not like them?
Well, I know people right now that feel that way.
Yeah.
And I think we've all felt that way.
I think, let's be honest, I think that we always sit there and we feel like, well, look at the mess I am. Look at my back alley, God. Why can't I be like this person?
Why do they seem to have the joy and the peace and the... And yeah, in that moment, because it's ours, all that is ours, but living in that reality is not quite as glorious. I mean, that's not the right word, but like the portrayal that we put on.
Perfect or fairy tale life that, because let's face it, everybody has a back alley. And maybe theirs may not be as dirty.
Riddled with junk.
Yeah, but it's still
Yeah.
there, and they struggle with the same concerns and the doubts and the all those things that everybody, anybody. Let's just be honest with it, if they have emotions, they have things that go on in their life. Yeah, they may be confident about one thing in one area of their life, but there might be 3 areas that they really struggle with.
Right.
And so I think not only can we call ourselves into thinking, oh, look at that trash, they must be trash people. We can also call ourselves into the envy that we might have, because why can't we have a life like that? Why can't we have this family that looks perfect like that? If you look at our family, it's the most, oh my.
And we just get to thinking and talking about that. I was like, you know what? There is no family. I don't care what it looks like in pictures.
Yeah, it's.
We all got stuff, and it can be complicated.
And when you add blended families and blended families, it always makes it mess, and makes it even more dramatic, not mess.
Yeah, and we quit trying a long time ago to make our kids into what we thought they should be.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't have to agree with everything, but boy, we sure have a lot easier time just loving our kids right where they're at.
Yeah.
Not stressing about trying to change them in this area or that area.
And you bringing that up about God's in their back alley reminds me that I can kind of take my hands off of my kids because they're all adults. And not that we don't love them, but we can just embrace the time of their adulthood, because God's already in that alley with them, as working through whatever it is.
Not in a condemning way.
No.
It's just, he's in our back alley.
Yeah.
And he's not leaving.
That's what's really good,
And he'll help us clean things up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know what? If we don't, it doesn't change his commitment to us and his faithfulness to us and dedication.
That's exciting.
So I think this is a good one.
Yeah.
Good way to end it.
I do too. So
don't worry about the back alleys.
Yeah.
You don't have to avoid them in the people that,
and
we don't have to do that.
And remember, he's in your back alley too, and he's not ever going to leave you. I love that part of it.
All right, we're going to sign off for now. Till next time.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.